Please note that this review is designed to be a listened to experience. None of the footage in the background is specifically tailored to what I'm talking about. It is fairly lazily done. It is just stuff from the opening of the game. This is to talk about my experiences. Please enjoy. Hello there, and welcome to the Demagen review for Gal Guardians Servants of the Dark, which I will hereafter be referring to as GG2 or Gal Guardians 2, because I'm lazy. The key was provided for a pre-release version of the game via Keymailer, and I specifically mentioned that this is a pre-release version that I used for the review, even though that should be a given, because I hope that the release version doesn't have some of the problems that I have faced with this experience. As always, if you like what I do, like and subscribe, follow me on Blue Sky, consider supporting me on Coffee. There is a map coming for GG2. It's taken quite some time to put together. It's still not complete actually at the time of recording this, and I'll explain a little bit as to why that is, just due to the nature of what I'm about to talk about. On the subject of time, I spent 22 plus hours in GG2, and it is not, unfortunately, because it's an amazing S-tier game. I didn't expect it to be. If you've watched me play the demo, you'll know that realistically there was at least one thing that I thought was going to bug me. That turned out to, I'm not going to say be one of the least of my concerns, but it wasn't one of my major ones. Don't get me wrong though, Gal Guardians 2 is not a bad game. It's not. It just isn't a good game either. It's what I would call an aggressively mediocre title. It's frustratingly middle of the road, and as I said, that isn't to do with my initial concern from the demo, which was the sheer voice line spam from the protagonist. So that is certainly here and constantly being screamed at by these two Japanese voices when I don't even know what they're saying is quite infuriating. The voice acting in the game otherwise is great. The storytelling and voice acting for that is all good. It's well done. Even though I don't speak Japanese, it sounds like it's well done. It's just the constant spam when you're jumping or attacking or dashing, and it's constant to the extent that I actually turned the volume of the game down. Couldn't just turn the voices off because there's no separate voice sliders in the sound options. But anyway, let's get on to the meat of my experience. The main problem that I had in the pre-release version was communication, which ties into all of the text and systems in the game. As I said, I got to play the pre-release build, and I hope that any of you watching and listening, or reading if I release the written version of the script, I don't know whether I will or not, I hope that you don't play the same version that I did, because there are several things that the game communicates so incredibly poorly that it added literal hours to my playtime, and not in a good way. Now, I can't review the release version of the game, because that's not what I played. I review my own experience with the pre-release version, and I'm going to tell you what those things are, so that hopefully you know how much better the experience you will have is. Or if they haven't been changed for release, you at least won't have the same issues that I did, because the communication that I needed and didn't get, I'm now going to communicate to you. That'll make sense in a minute, I promise. So, the upgrade path of the game. At the start of the game and the demo, if you've played that, your Demon Lord, Maxim Onslaught, which is a slightly amusing name, is quote-unquote killed, and his bones are scattered across the lands, and for the rest of the game, you as the two maids scour the map for his bones, get his power back, and face off against his destroyer. So your upgrade path, your method of progression, is governed by you recovering the bones of the Demon Lord, passing them to the throne in his castle. And it's essentially an XP track. You'll find the bones on enemies everywhere, but you can't, I discovered, just farm the same enemies over and over and over again. You have to push into new areas as you level up to find harder versions of enemies to defeat, because they will drop bones more frequently. It's an okay system, in my opinion. It keeps the game moving. I liked it. Now, at various milestones on the upgrade path, you will unlock abilities / upgrades like the mid-air jump, the air dash, extra jumps to the mid-air jump, extra dashes to the air dash, extra loadouts for your sub-weapons. You can get up to, I think it's 4 or 5, like, mid-air jumps in this game. So it's not just a double jump. If you like double jumps, this doubles it. Now, 3 of the powers on this track are tied specifically to your demon lord. You get demonic healing, or devil healing, devil dash, and devil straight, which is an odd choice of name for it, and I'm wondering if it's a mistranslation. Now, in the pre-release version, in the version of the game that I played, the game didn't tell you how to activate any of these powers. Now, devil healing is done by holding down for a period of time your demon power button. Why it's devil healing but demon power button, I don't know. Again, it feels like this was translated by multiple different people. There'll be an on-screen effect to kind of charge up, and then it will heal a chunk of your HP, and that's quite useful if you don't like going into menus and using a consumable. And there are some consumable heals in this, but you don't need to use them all that often, at least on the easier difficulties. Now, to be fair, the game does show you the binding for the demon power button on the controller menu. So if you look at your controls and rebind them, like I did, you'll have seen that. But it never actually tells you to do it in-game. So if you haven't looked at the key bindings, you won't know what it is unless you just randomly press buttons. But it's devil healing is the least of your worries when it comes to these 3 powers. Devil dash is done by holding the DPB, the demon power button, and hitting dash, or dashing and then hitting and holding the DPB while dashing. And this gives you an effect very, very similar to the Black Panther Soul in, I can't remember whether it was Aria or Dawn of Sorrow. It lets you run at great speeds and damage enemies as you go. And in the tutorial for this, whilst it does tell you what this does, it doesn't tell you how to activate it. Nor does it tell you that it allows you to run across water until one very specific location where there is a dialogue trigger that tells you about it. And it certainly doesn't tell you that the Devil Dash can actually get you through the glowing thorns that you'll have been finding in the forest area. You'll probably discover this by accident, like I did. It's a great power, it's good for speeding you around, but it didn't tell you, and I very much hope that it does in the version that you might play, it didn't tell me how to actually activate it. Now, don't get me wrong, you know, Devil Dash, it's kind of in the name. But, yeah. That wasn't really the issue. It was the 3rd power, the Devil Straight, which is a big old punch. And I wasted over 2 hours of my life because of the lack of communication with this ability. I was getting more and more and more annoyed. At various points in the game, you will have found pink glowing stone barriers. You'll have got a way of getting through just normal stone barriers reasonably early on. And as soon as I got the Devil Straight unlocked, I figured, it tells me that this will help me get through terrain. That's what I'm going to use to get through these glowing stone barriers. Finally. And the game gave me absolutely no clue how to use this ability. I tried every button in combination with the demon power button. I tried fighting game inputs. I tried as many combinations as I could think of, but it turns out that I didn't go far enough, because pressing 2 buttons at once just wasn't enough for the activation of this ability. In fact, what you have to do, and I hope to God that they improve the tutorial for this in the game, you have to hold the demon power button. If you want it to go vertical, you need to hold up or down as well, and then you need to press both sub-weapon buttons. So that's triangle and circle on the PlayStation controller that I was using. So that is 3 or potentially 4 buttons that need pressing at once. So because I didn't try pressing triangle, circle and L2, which is what I'd got the demon power button bound to, because I hadn't specifically hit those 3 buttons, I wasted over 2 hours of my life trying to find a way forwards when, as it turns out, there was none. I had literally been everywhere that I could physically get to in game without this power, but I had no idea how to activate it, and that left such a frustrating and sour taste in my mouth that it realistically has affected my opinion of the entire rest of the playthrough. Something that is so simple as telling your player how to do the important thing that they need to do, and the devs just didn't think to do it. Now, I did speak to a PR person eventually, and they said that they would be updating the tutorials for this, but in case they don't do a good job, now you know that you have to press 3 or potentially 4 buttons to use this ability. And it's important. It's important, you know, because despite being a patient person, this lack of communication was incredibly frustrating. And I got more and more ground down by this, going over the same areas again and again and again, hitting walls looking for secret paths, because of course the game was under embargo. I didn't have anyone to reach out and talk to, and in fact it was only because I actually slightly broke the embargo and made a plea for help on the Steam forums, hoping a dev would notice, because Keymailer didn't provide me with a dev or PR contact. I had to go searching for one. There was no Discord or anything that I could find. It was only because I broke the rules that I managed to get some help. So a shout out to the Soulsborne Seeker, in fact, who came to my aid, you legend. I have no idea how you figured out the button combo, and the thread has been locked because I broke the embargo. So I can't ask you about it. Anyway, discounting that absolute fuckery with Devil Straits, Gal Guardians 2 is, I'd say, about a 15-hour long game, which is a respectable length, keeping in mind that I was playing on the casual difficulty. I didn't really want to go balls to the wall hardcore retro feel for this. Add on a couple of hours that I wasted making 0 progress whatsoever because of the Devil Straits, and that brings you to 17 hours. So how, you may be asking if you're even vaguely mathematically minded, how have I managed to get over 22 hours? Well, you know how in some Metroidvania games they incorporate little running quest chains. You run into some characters and then you run into them again later in a set order that unveils like a little mini story. They're here, then they're here, then they're here, they go on a journey, yada yada yada. Gal Guardians 2 has got one of those as well, but, and again, communication is the issue here. There is 0 guidance for where these characters might be heading next. They don't seem to be going on a particular journey from one side of the map to the other, for example. In fact, let's recount the journey as I found it so far, and I say so far because I haven't been able to finish this. There's a couple of things in this game that I just don't know how to get to. So let's recount the journey. So first time you encounter these NPCs, you actually fight them as a boss, or a boss style encounter in the icy zone. Then you run into them again in the hot springs, at the bottom of the icy zone on the way to the fiery zone. You then randomly, and I had to go looking for them for this, and this took a while, randomly ran into them in the cavern in the middle of the map, which you went to probably 10, 12 plus hours ago at this point. And this particular room I had absolutely no reason to return to. It was only because I was going through the map and literally crossing off each room to say that I'd been and explored it, that I actually ran into them. There's nothing that guides you to them there. And then I ran into them again. Back at the top of the mountain in the icy zone. And then I found them in a random room in the forest. This is kind of left to bottom left to middle to top left to kind of middle-ish again. It's annoying. If they were clearly going on some kind of journey, you could predict roughly what zone they might end up in next, like you did with Redento in Blasphemous. You know, he goes on a reasonably obvious journey. But this doesn't have that. They just seem to be randomly in different areas of the map to fuck with you, essentially, and make you waste your time exploring everything over and over and over again. Because there's no guarantee that they might not end up in the same zone that you've already just explored before you've found them again. So, I mean, this is the kind of shit that I would absolutely use a guide for. Only I can't, because the game isn't out for another 3 days at the time of writing this script. I've got no guides to look up, and let's be honest, if the guy who spends hours making maps for games is wanting to look up a guide, then you fucked up something in your design process somewhere. So yeah, I've now put over 5 hours into exploring every room in various zones over and over and over again, crossing off the room each time, and I am bored of it. Bored and annoyed because it's such bad design. Subjectively, obviously, some of you might think this is really good. But I think as the guy who makes, or as a guy, not the guy, as a guy who makes maps for these kinds of games, I've spoken to a lot of people over the last 5 or 6 years about this kind of stuff, about why people use my maps. And this is the exact reason why people use my kind of maps, because something in a game just isn't worth the time of doing it properly. Again, if a precedent had been set that the NPCs only ever featured in each zone once, it would be it'd be kind of okay. But the fact that you've got to do each zone each time is just padding. It's just time wasting, and it isn't fun. It isn't worth it, even with the cool Black Panther speed ability. So yeah, use a guide for that if you even care. There is an achievement, a couple of achievements for it. So I don't have that one because yeah, haven't finished it. Let's dial it back. Let's intervene. Let's get some positives out of the way. Dark Guardians 2 has a fairly charming story. Yeah, there's some nice writing, there's some nice dialogue, even if it is fairly predictable anime bullshit style stuff. It's more entertaining than I expected it to be. And it's got competent controls, and as far as I've been able to tell, I haven't encountered anything that I would say is a significant bug. It doesn't, as a game, do anything particularly revolutionary or exciting, and it leans more towards kind of a Symphony of the Night style of things. So some people like it for that. In terms of combat, because you can switch between the protagonists whenever you want, you've got access to melee combat with a whip, or ranged combat with an Uzi, or an SMG. Not entirely sure why that is, but only on a horizontal plane. There's no up attacks, no down attacks, no diagonals. So expect to be, and I know that this will not appeal to some people, expect to be jumping up a lot to try and reach airborne enemies that keep flying out of reach. I do not know why developers continue to put enemies like that in games, but they do. They're just as annoying here as they are in every other game. Each maid has access to sub-weapons, some of which can be equipped by both, others which are unique to one or the other. There's a load of variety to these, but they're quite expensive to cast at the start of the game, and I found myself not really using them much because of that. And then obviously as you get through the game and you progress up the experience track, you get more of your mana essentially, and the prices don't increase, so you can use more of them. But I'd gotten kind of out of habit of using them anyway, so I didn't engage with that system much. I think it probably needed better balancing at the lower end. But yeah, combat is perfectly serviceable. It's not massively unique, it's not massively exciting, it doesn't do anything particularly interesting or amazing, but it's functional. In terms of the areas that you can explore, you've got your generic standards. You've got an icy mountain with slippery ground, you've got a volcano with lava that burns you, although the lava can be frozen with your sub-weapons or stuff, so that's a nice little touch. You've got a dark cavern that you need a lantern to get through, you've got a forest full of thorns, you've got a desert zone, basic tropes. Nothing massively exciting really, except one area that's a bit like the water temple in Zelda, where you've got to raise and lower the water levels. I quite like that. I can see why a lot of people might not. And each of those zones has got mostly appropriate enemies. It's not like they've just got a random grab bag of stuff like was in Blade Chimera. No, these actually seem to mostly be significant and tied to the zones in terms of an elemental or environmental theme. So that's two of my three Metroidvania pillars, combat and biomes. Third pillar is of course the abilities that you get, and the Metroidvania powers in Gal Guardians 2 are also fairly basic. You've got those devil powers that I mentioned earlier, you've got the sub-weapons which also provide you with a way, some of them at least provide you with a way around, like the lance for example. Once you find that in the desert zone, that allows you to charge through certain blocks. Or there's a boomerang ability that can actually be used, I think, to kind of vaguely sequence break, because it will fly through walls and then come back, and if they're those kind of walls that you break from the other side, it can actually do that. It's nothing crazy, it's nothing even particularly exciting. And there are relics that you can equip as well, and they can do, I'm not going to say interesting thing, they're like things like coin magnets, or giving you X percentage HP, and so on and so forth. Although a couple of them give you extra dashes and double jumps, which is nice. And there is one actually that resets your jump counter if you switch maid while you're in midair. You can only do it once before you land again, but that means that you can actually get up to like 10 total jumps in the air, which allows you to scale certain really high rooms. And that was quite cool when I found it, and it did have a single puzzle that you had to mess about with that, which I quite liked, but that was mostly it. It covers all the bases of the kind of three pillars in a fairly bog standard, generic way. Let's get to the end of this. Let's get back to, I suppose, the niggles that really kind of exacerbated the death by 1,000 tiny frustrations feeling. And these are teeny tiny things, mostly. There's a lot of levers and gates in this game, and it isn't always clear what lever is opening what gate. Some of them are colour coded, some of them aren't, some of them are in a different room to where they open, which is a little bit frustrating. I found at least one lever that I don't know what it does, and I found a couple of gates that don't seem to have any levers attached to them. So there's at least one room that I have no idea how to get into, and again, because there's the embargo and I've got nobody to talk to or ask about this, I can't ask for help. Has anybody found how to get into this room at the time of writing and recording this? Because I can't talk to anybody about it. The sub-weapon system that I have mentioned, you can upgrade these things at the blacksmith. You can fuse them together, you can upgrade them, you can move the stats on them around. I didn't find it actually very engaging, and the traits on some of these weapons aren't explained anywhere. So I didn't even know what they did, and I didn't use the sub-weapons enough to really care. And because these sub-weapons drop everywhere, and you've got an inventory limit, which admittedly can be expanded a couple of times, but still, I ended up constantly getting an inventory full message. You can't pick up any more items, and I could not be bothered to do the menu and item management stuff of this. And more importantly, in some cases, if your inventory is full, you can actually pick up something important and overcap your inventory, in which case you can't even change your equipment around or use consumables and stuff until you've actually gone into your menus and discarded something or what have you. It was unnecessarily frustrating, and I could have done without it. Here's a somewhat major issue. The game does have a fast travel system, which is important because the map is fairly substantial. You pay a small fee and you can take a boat around the map. It's fast because it's fast travel. Now, there is a boat that you can unlock in the castle. You don't get it straight away though. It's not like in a normal Castlevania game where you'll find a warp room and then it will allow you to warp to a room very close to the hub. No. None of that. In fact, you can get back to the hub really quickly in this game by using one of the save points. It always lets you teleport back to the castle. But it's getting back to where you were that is the problem. You unlock the boat at the castle, as well as all the other NPCs and stuff in your hub, by finding souls out on the map. You know, these are the souls of characters that died in the attack at the start of the game, and they've just kind of scattered across the land. Most of them are really easy to spot, but the fast travel one I didn't find for 9 hours because it is just out of the way enough. In a room that you might not even go past for a long time if you just take the route that the game kind of suggests to you and don't go back to. So all the way through the game, I was constantly, finding all of these fast travel points around the map. It's like, oh, that's cool. Got another fast travel point. Really wish I had one at the castle so I can get back to all of these places easily. It's a dumb design. And I foresee a lot of people falling into the same trap that I did and just missing this room and then complaining that there's no fast travel as I did. Because something this important should be located on the critical path in a room that you are guaranteed to go into early. Or better yet, it not be something that you have to find at all. The fact that I missed it for 9 hours is not great. But combine this issue of fast travel with the bones that you're searching for, because for whatever reason they've decided that you can only carry 99 of these bones in your inventory at a time, so you've got to go back to the castle to drop them off at the throne, otherwise you waste drops. Now, as I said, getting back to the castle, easy. You can warp straight there, or even actually straight to the throne, which is a nice little quality of life thing. From any save points, getting back to the castle to drop off your bones, really easy. Getting back to where you were to continue, can't do that at a save point. You need to use the boat. And as I said, if you don't find that one specific soul in one specific slightly off the path room in the second area of the game, you could very well be over halfway through, almost 2/3 of the way through the game, before you finally unlock it. That was really annoying. The map is blocky. Looks like it was drawn in good cartographer. It's functional. That's about all I will say for it. It is functional. It's not memorable. And there's nothing really significant in the game that is memorable either, really. No, that's not technically true. There are some trees. They look like hangman trees. They're the only interesting landmarks that I've seen in the game. And to be honest, they're only interesting landmarks because I've found no use for them. 20 plus hours into the game and I haven't found a single thing to do with these trees. They are too obvious because there's one in a cave. There's one in a cave that you can get into where there's nothing else in that cave. They have to have a purpose, but I don't know what it is. I haven't found it. Maybe it's part of that NPC quest line, but again, it's not well signposted. So yeah, all of these things brought the fun down of the game significantly. Many of them can be, I would think, probably fairly easily patched, especially the kind of tutorializing things. And I've had confirmation that the tutorials are being updated, but whether the devs will feel the need to change any of this other stuff, I don't know. I have written out a big feedback document with my gripes and grievances for the devs. But I got to admit, I can't say I'm thrilled about the prospect of another run through of Gal Guardians to see how much the devs may or may not take on board. So, to sum up, because this has already gone on for long enough, we've got some reasonable combat, we've got some amusing writing, we've got some entertaining, let's call it secondary motion and characteristics, jiggle physics, on the sprites for some of the giant anime lady bosses, and there's an expansive set of somewhat generic biomes, fire, ice, desert, etc. All of the positives, all of the things that I like and found entertaining in this game don't balance out the fact that I think the game did a really poor job of giving the information I needed to actually have a smooth and fun experience. Right now, the game is going in my D tier for does some things right, because it does do some things right. If they fix up the tutorials and change some of the text around and maybe give me a voice slider so I can turn off the constant spam, it could maybe scrape it up into the C tier for competent, but it's not going any higher than that. So yeah, that's my review of Gal Guardians Servants of the Dark. But please can we have that option to turn down or toggle off the voice line spam from the protagonist? They scream in Japanese anime voices for everything they do. Thanks for watching, folks. Stay safe, stay fabulous. Cheerio. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, why not click the like button and consider subscribing. Remember, you can ring the bell notification icon to get notified when new videos go live. And until next time, cheerio.